it's, your health, your story. So I love getting that story first instead of starting at the end, and we'll get into Health Optimization Summit. But like, what led you to becoming the Tim Biohacker and the UK leading authority in that?
Sure, that caught me out good and proper. Well, where did we start? It's the usual route of someone being a patient, and then a patient of someone else, and then a patient of someone else, and then a patient of someone else, and a patient of someone else, and it's all reductionist, and everyone seems to have their bias or opinion, and the newest thing that's causing people's health issues, or the newest resolve, like, methylation is the new thing, or candida is the big evil, blah, blah, blah. So I started in the traditional route after just getting, I guess it started with a bit of anxiety and whatnot, and I was a very stable, strong-minded guy. Yeah, I just got a bit of anxiety, started bloating. I got thrush around the filling in my mouth, which was the connecting thing, the beginning of the rabbit hole for me. I was in and out of the doctors every day. I got kidney stones after being away on holiday, and that hospitalized me for a few days. And all the doctors told me after seeing multiple specialists was drink more water and don't eat strawberries, which is just, I mean, they know what they know, and they've been taught what they've been taught, unfortunately. Anyway, so yeah, it got to the point where I was having urinary tract infections and urinating, 30 to 50 times a day, and that's no exaggeration. It was literally, I would have something to drink and then I'd be in the bathroom, and it was a prison. It was an absolute prison. And then one day, I'd been into the doctors every single day for over a week, actually, and it had been the 5th day in a row, working day, where I was in the doctor's surgery, and I'd got to know the receptionists. I couldn't drive there because I'd been so ill, and my mum actually took me up, and at 31, your mum driving you to the doctors is not something you expect to need. And I said, Dr. Norris, tell me, what is going on? And he shrugged his shoulders and said, we can't find anything wrong, And so I remember in the car on the way back thinking, this isn't good enough, have to figure something out. And I think the biggest issue that everyone seems to have when they break out of the medical matrix, I guess, is that what happens if our doctors don't know what's wrong with us? Who does know? Like, it's almost like being lost in space without a cord to a vessel. It's like kind of like you need to, or we need to have trust in someone that knows better than us. And it's almost like, when you tell someone that their doctors don't know what they're talking about in a certain area, they go, no, that can't be right. They know, you should listen to them. So it's because we have this attachment to believing that someone knows better, and that gives us hope. Well, I think for me, I kind of let go and said, I don't care about any of that anymore. I just care about being optimal like I once was, and healthy again, and I'm going to do what I needed to do. So I literally got Post-it notes, and I keep them everywhere I go. Again, I build and scale and sell companies historically, and so all I did was apply the business mindset to my health, essentially taking the emotion out of it and thinking strategically. So from the bottom up, mapping out every single one of the symptoms into, I guess, a cause and effect, bottom up approach, until I linked them all together. And, for me, it was initially mercury poisoning, which caused a whole host of issues, from cellular or nutrient deficiencies to enzymatic issues, digestive issues, brain fog, energy, chronic fatigue, viral issues, and also, enhances, if you do have the MTHFR gene variants, or one of them, mercury poisoning obviously enhances that somewhat. And people without the MTHFR issues obviously don't necessarily get the mercury issues in the first place because they're detoxifying properly or significantly better. So for me, it was a whole spiral, and it got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, to the point where I couldn't leave the house. So doing this cause and effect really helped me figure out the root cause without knowing anything about biohacking or functional medicine, anything other than traditional reductionist medicine. And then I just started researching each one of those topics and then fixing each symptom until I was able to tackle the top one. And I think the nearest I know to that now, other than biohacking mindset, which I heard about, 6-7 years ago now, after I'd been researching for nearly 4 or 5 years, is there's a book called Toxic. I think it's by Neil Nathan. And he is all about Lyme disease or chronic health issues that no one else seems to be able to fix, and tackling the biggest baddie in a chronological order. So, for instance, hitting Lyme first might not be the right approach, but attacking, or should I say, approaching the reason why you have mast cell activation in the first place before then attacking Lyme. So, it's about I guess a chronological order of attacking the right thing in the right order, not just everything all at once. So biohacking really does do that.
Yeah, a lot of what we say in medicine, at least here in this functional integrated medicine, is peeling the layers of an onion, right? It's starting with and a lot of people try to go to the core first. If you have Lyme, you go after Borrelia, but that's at the center of the onion. Until you could fix the terrain, detoxify, get rid of things that allow the center of the onion to persist, it'll always come back, even if you keep throwing antibiotics at it. So it was incredible that you were basically doing that. You were biohacking yourself into a healthy state because you had to. No doctors were giving you an answer. And you made that jump rather quickly, you said. You kind of went from doctor to doctor. How long was that you were in the doctor's care before you said, I'm jumping out of this?
It was about 18 months, something like that.
So that's pretty quick. That's pretty quick, because a lot of people stay in that forever, for years and years, and just get passed along and just continue to slowly deteriorate, get a little bit of boost after you do some antibiotics, go back down. But, a lot of what you're saying right now is this focus on detoxification as well as the terrain theory and creating an environment.
Yes.
Do you think that was your biggest kind of goal in this, and that was what really helped you, was once you started cleansing your terrain? Did you start to see symptoms relieve because you were tracking all this?
Yeah, I think the biggest one of all, and in this is retrospectively, obviously, was introducing some nature and stillness. I'm not talking necessarily meditation, although meditation is a good area to start with the whole mind side of things and quieting the brain. But terrain theory, or optimizing the environment outside of you, as Dave Asprey calls it, optimizing the environment inside of you and outside of you to take control of your biology, i.e. the definition of biohacking from the man himself. I like to say that we're using nature and technology to mimic a natural environment in an unnatural world. So, for instance, if we're not grounding because we don't have a garden, or we live in a city with pavements, what ways can we get grounding to restore that balance that we need electrically speaking? And what else? Really, adjusting your environment is a huge part, but that obviously tackles the environment inside of you at the same time. And that can be with your food, the chemicals that are going in, and various other things as well. So I do think that terrain, both inside and outside, is critical to this. And I think depending on which mindset or area of medicine or alternative health you come from, we all seem to have a very similar, core area to hit.
Yeah, it's really interesting when I hear biohacking more and more, and I only got introduced to it a few years ago. I've been around medicine my whole life, with my father as a doctor, and just traveling the world, meeting different doctors since I was little, and going along with my father to different conventions. But when I hear more of the word biohacking, it seems to me like there is this bridging of the gap between where medicine should be and where biohacking is. Right? You're looking at these kind of solutions, and you're even saying things like grounding using energy, things like biocharger and other types of technologies that are being used by biohackers that are also being used in top medical clinics to treat, chronically ill. So do you see the future of medicine and biohacking coming on a convergent line? Because so many kind of see it going opposite, where, okay, more vaccines in this and these people are going this way. But I'm looking at it and seeing it come together. Do you agree with that?
100%.
Yeah.
When I created the Health Optimization Summit, and one of the core things behind it was not to call it a biohacking conference or a biohacker summit, like, you know, like my colleagues and friends, which is nothing wrong with that, by the way. But biohacking has an area of stigma to it, and a lot of people don't like the label. A lot of people don't understand the label. Media has also tried to destroy the label in many ways, talking about transhumanism and biohacking being the same thing. It's not. So my goal was to bring in health, fitness, medical wellness, nutrition, biohacking, paleo, keto, any of these things together, of saying, leave the ego at the door, put your bias to one side. What do we need to do to get to our ultimate goal, which is health and, you know, optimal performance? You know, and it's funny because there were several brands. For instance, one of them was Nova Thor, who is very well respected, I think, in the medical world with laser and red light. And James Carroll, the founder over there, when I spoke to him and said, look, I really, really, really want you at the summit. If there's a brand I want, it's you, basically. And he said, well, we don't usually exhibit at biohacking conferences because of, you know, biohacking being not understood. He said, but because you're including medical and you're not just about biohacking, then I would love to. And then, you know, they were an exhibitor and he was a speaker at our summit, which was brilliant because it showed the medical world and pharmaceutical world and all the fitness world that we can actually work together and be in the same place and coexist, because really all that matters is finding optimal health for everyone. And the part two of what you said is that the medical world has saved my ass multiple times. I am very grateful for it. It's amazing how far it has come and the things that we can achieve. With chronic health issues, however, my opinion is it's flipping horrendous in most. And I think if the medical world embraced what biohacking has stumbled across and has some good data for, embraced it into their approaches, not only could they help more people be healthy, they could also make more money too. And I think that's where the system is failing. Now, biohackers do incorporate some pharmaceuticals and various other modalities as well, which are less accepted. But we don't have the full freedom because obviously we don't have medical licenses or prescribing rights, and a lot of doctors won't prescribe a biohacker something to experiment with. So while we do experiment with some things, we don't experiment with ultimate. And I think if there was more synergy, then, you know, we could conquer together. And I think that's really over the next 10 to 15 years where it will end up going. You know, you just have to look at 23andMe being bought out, you know, and various other companies, like, for instance, Mark Sisson's Primal Kitchen, which was brought out, I think it was by Kraft, for a huge sum of money. It's showing that the traditional big food, big pharma are watching and saying, look, we're looking for what people are going to be spending their money on. So, you know, where should we be buying and innovating ourselves? And I think that that's moving fairly quickly now. So I think it would be very normal.
Yeah, I think this definition of integrative medicine that so few really have looked at yet and still don't understand, it's truly the integration of all modalities from around the world, looking at past, present, and future, and applying it to the individual patient to address their root causes best and get them back to health, not to manage disease as we've been doing for so long. So when I say that to people, they say, oh, that makes perfect sense to me. Then why in the hell doesn't the medical community jump on board? Do you think there's a resistance because of just big pharma, because of healthcare insurance isn't covering this yet? What is it that people aren't really jumping on board? And there's kind of a minority, you would say, that knows about this, but the majority still believes in conventional medicine to solve all answers, even chronic disease.
This is a multifaceted answer. Number one is bearing in mind that a lot of medical professionals, and I'm not talking necessarily functional or integrated, because I feel like they're a lot more flexible and less stuck in their ways. In fact, they're very free-flowing and ready to experiment with some things. Traditional general practitioners or traditional Western medicine have been taught something that's been commonplace for 20 years or 10 years, and they've been doing it for 20 years. They've been helping patients their whole career. If they're told that what they've been doing has been wrong and actually been hurting people, what would that do to someone psychologically speaking? You know, oh my God, I came into this industry to help people, and now I know that this patient had the opposite, and I actually could have done more by doing less. You know, that's going to be very hard hitting to someone. And so therefore we're, you know, things that hurt us, we keep at a distance, whether or not that's an ex-partner, whether or not it's past behavior, we blank these things out. And that's just basic psychology. So I think that that's number one. Some things haven't been adopted because it goes against the grain of what they've been taught a long time ago. The second point is that as a medical practitioner or a medical professional, you are at risk of losing your license for talking about some things. And Big Pharma knows this, obviously, and it is geared this way to keep people practicing stuff that, one, has been tried and tested for a long time, because if doctors listened to everything a little biohacker talked about online, they would be implementing all these things that haven't been tried or tested. So that's point one. Number two is that it won't be selling pharmaceuticals. Now I appreciate that, you know, this may be controversial, but the point is I am not against Big Pharma at all. I'm being very explicit with this. I am saying that we need to integrate, as we were discussing a minute ago, to make this work better. And I think if the same rules are in place for medical practitioners, but they were able to explore areas and have a certain amount of cases a year where they were to explore alternative treatments, like once upon a time, acupuncture was allowed in, just crept in a little bit. And now look how readily available acupuncture is, which was woo-woo many years ago. You know, we could see this approach more often. And medical insurance do cover, in the UK anyway, things like acupuncture, alternative treatments, or, you know, chiropractors, or, you know, myofascial release alternative treatments. So I do think it's possible, and 1% improvement does imply that it can be significantly more. So to round off on that, I think that if medical practitioners were giving a little bit more freedom and were less scared of losing their license, and everyone got together in the same mindset, then I think it would affect change quite quickly. It's my opinion anyway.
No, I second that opinion. And I always thought in the medical industry, it seems like there's a very big scarcity mindset. Like there's only a certain amount of the pie and everyone's fighting for it. And, you know, the patients are, you know, have to stay in the medical system and pump out as much profits as possible. But if we apply an abundant mindset and all come together, I think we'll see everyone can make more than enough money, energy, and help people. And it won't be such an issue of, you know, pharma versus alternative versus everything else. And again, it just seems like we're already moving in that direction. It's helping people. And you're hearing these stories, such as yourself. From our center, we hear them all the time. And it just goes to show that when you open yourself up just a little bit, that 1%, you could see gigantic changes and shifts happening. And I definitely think that's where we'll be going. How quickly that happens is really up to, I think, the people, not even the industry itself.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about money and making money, ultimately, and it's growing, all we do is swap around money between us all.
It's just energy, right? It's just energy transfer.
Yeah, someone is collecting more than others, granted, and there's a few people that are very good at collecting it than others. The point is, it is just transfer of ownership of something, and there is enough for it to go around. In fact, you know, they're printing more and more money. There's even more of it to go around, although it's becoming worth less and less, but it's a different argument. The point is, I do think that, yeah, there's enough people and there's enough money for everyone, and I think with the right approach that it's possible for it to be widespread approach with biohacking or functional medicine, integrative medicine, and all these things.
Yeah. Let's get back to your story a little bit, because you biohacked yourself into health, and now you're a healthy being. And like so many patients I know that have regained their health, you almost paid it forward. You kept going. Your story almost started at the point of regaining your health, and you kept going into creating the Health Optimization Summit, creating these meetups. Can you go into that and where that story started there and kind of led into this large meeting now that is a annually kind of thing that so many people come to, and is the largest in Europe, right?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm not completely healthy, or should I say, I am healthy, but I do have some things I'm working on.
We're always healing, right? Always.
Yes, there are some things, and it's not me striving for perfection, although I do. Yeah, there are some things I'm working on. But yeah, I think when I got into biohacking, or should I say, before I realized what biohacking was, I was doing a lot of these things. I was testing out different supplements. I was tracking a load of stuff. And a colleague told me about Bulletproof Coffee. And, I didn't really understand ketogenic. I didn't understand high fat. All I saw was a puddle of oil, butter sitting on the top of a coffee because he didn't know how to make it. But, he was into modafinil and all these things. And I realized that there was something like biohacking, and that there was a load of crazy people out there like me. Although earlier days, Bulletproof was more aimed at high performance, business execs and things. But obviously Dave Asprey coming from sickness himself, and that's where the original spin on the whole biohacking thing came from. So it kind of evolved, and now it's wider. It's for high performance athletes. It's for everyone, including people with chronic health issues. And Dave's very vocal about all of those. So for me, once I heard about Bulletproof, I started listening to Dave's podcast a lot. I listened to every word of just about every one of them for a very long time. But I'd been reading Dr. Makoda's emails, since 2010, something like that, maybe a bit before. So I learned quite a few things along the way. I reversed my mum's osteopenia from learning from Dr. Makoda and being able to research some of those things. And then I'd listened to so many episodes of Bulletproof. And then one day Dave talked about hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And it was just a 30-second, you got to try this type thing. So I Googled hyperbaric oxygen therapy. I searched across the UK for a clinic. There was one, other than a medical hospital that you couldn't get into. I went and tried it out. And then halfway through the session, I felt different. I felt alert. I felt alive. I knew that there was something in it. And then that night, I had the best night's sleep I had done for ages. It was like my body went into parasympathetic mode, finally. So I did that several times a week. It was very expensive, like $180 an hour minimum. And it was taking me 2 hours to get there, 2 hours back with 2 hours in the middle. So it was, running a couple of companies by that point, I didn't have the time. So I decided to open a clinic up in central London. I built it over the space of a month, hired the PhD to run the clinic for me, and I now built processes, and so it's self-running. I was in the clinic pretty much every other day. Now, that is really got me on the map, because I got to meet quite a few people on Instagram because I was this hyperbaric guy. I got a few influencers and health people through the clinic. I got to meet the Bulletproof guys that were in the UK at the time, and also did the Tony Robbins event for Bulletproof. And as a thank you, they gave me a ticket to the Bulletproof conference in Pasadena in 2017. And when I got there, I was just like, holy crap, there's a whole community of people out there. I didn't realize how freaking huge it was. And then, and I just loved it. And I went with my big brother, who's, he's a muggle in this respect. He doesn't really, didn't really believe in it that much, but he had a great time, picked up a few things. When we came back, it was like an anticlimax. There was like 3 or 4 of us in the UK, no scene, no movement. So I decided to start up a meetup group called the Biohacker London Meetup Group, thinking I'd have 4 or 5 friends join it, and we'd have a little meetup once a month. And it grew to 400, 500, 600 people very quickly. And then one day I said to my mum, I've got this whole group of 600 biohackers, and she said, "What's a biohacker?" It's a bit of a weird word. And I said, well, it's kind of like people that use data and science and technology to optimize their health. She said, hey, you should think about that. Now, being a marketer and, having 20 years in psychology and digital marketing behind me, I kind of like listened to every conversation I had and would make a note of the different keywords that people would mention. Health and optimization came up so many times, but no one had connected the two, or so I had thought. And then one day I said to my very dear friend, Dr. Scott Scher, who I met through Dom D'Agostino and the Hyperbaric conference over in Denver a few years back. I said, I'm going to do the health optimization and Biohacker London. He said, oh, Dr. Ted Akihoso and I are running health optimization medicine. And he said, that's a coincidence. And so I was like, there's something in it. So we changed the label of the Meetup group to be Biohacker and Health Optimization London. And it, kind of doubled, tripled, quadrupled very, very, very quickly, because it brought in the mindset of Biohacker, but not with the label. So I knew that we were onto something. And then I decided to do a conference, and reached out to Dave and Martin Tobias, who used to run the labs for Dave, and also PaleoFX, who are amazing guys. And I knew that if I had the titans on my side, I would have strategic support to be able to conquer England, which we did. And then year one of the summit had 1,200 people nearly, 40 speakers, 50 exhibitors. And, I was told that we were more like a year 3 or 4 in year one. And it was a very smooth event. So after which Dave invested. He's now a major stakeholder in it for me. So I run, run the UK part. So it's been a really fun journey. And now, as a result, I'm working on a book, also working on a digital course at the moment, and also the summit. So it's been a very interesting and fun ride for me.
I mean, it goes to show the power of health in general and the interest of people. Because I always feel a little bit mixed on this, is where do you prioritize health? I see a lot of people come through our doors at the clinic driving beautiful cars, but when you tell them it's going to be some, thousands of dollars, but we have a good track record regaining your health, it seems expensive. And you start to say, all right, well, where's your priority? Is it really health, or is it, driving fancy things, saving all your money, and kind of, sitting with your illness? But from, the other side of that is look at the growth of something like Health Optimization Summit, which is all about optimizing our greatest wealth, health. And people are truly interested in that. And I think there is a movement going into it. And I think you're just, able to capitalize on that, use your own story, do it in the right way, and show people how to do that. I think the future, a lot of medicine and health, is just empowerment and education, is connecting them. Like I love your posts on Instagram because they're of value, they're educational. And, and so maybe that would be a great next question. What are some of the things in biohacking you could do that don't cost you? Because I know today you posted something on free biohacks, and everyone thinks it's going to be expensive. You need lots of technology. I don't have money for that, right? But it's not like that at all. There's so many free things you could do.
Yes, I think I remember being on stage in London a year and a half ago, and it wasn't my usual audience, but I was sitting in on it because I'd been asked to do this. So I did live podcasts, and I said, when I flew to LA the other week, and they all went, ooh, rich kid. Okay, I guess for the audience, it just wasn't the right fit. But while I wasn't trying to show off, I was saying that I go to LA, which is kind of the hub, along with Austin, of health in the US, so at the forefront of it. But a lot of people associate biohacking with being for rich kids. And I did a post a few months ago of biohacking on a budget, because I'd been told that I'm a rich kid so many times. I started my first company with £32, which is about $40, and I got it to 7 figures a year, within 2.5 years actually. And I've done that multiple times through grit and passion towards something I loved at the time. Health is now my passion, and spreading the things that I learn is more important. But when you come up against a barrier such as you've got to be rich to do it, well, hang on a minute. No, it's where you divert your funds or your energy. And like you said about the car, if that person couldn't drive their car anymore, and they couldn't leave their bed anymore, and they had 24 hours to live, you bet their bottom dollar they would spend every penny they had to get that back. And then probably moan about it afterwards, but still justify it by saying it was still a good thing. But beforehand, preventing, they won't do it. So when the opportunity came up to talk about biohacking on a budget to show it's accessible to everyone, that was actually my most popular post I've ever done. And I had more followers from that post than I've done with any before. And then I've done a series of similar posts, but today I just thought I'd do absolutely free, because people still keep on saying, I can't afford it. I can't afford organic food, or I can't afford this. But I just thought I'd just hit it with free biohacks. And just to show that biohacking is just a mindset with a very cool label. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy is fantastic. I have my own chamber. I'm very lucky to have one. And I built my career in an industry so I could have things like that. either as an expense or as a gift from the exhibitors, or to trial out before I invite them to the summit. And I understand that not everyone has access to our hyperbaric oxygen chamber, but everyone has access to breath work and time. And if people say, oh, well, I don't have time, however many kids you've got, whatever else you've got going on, it only takes you to get sick to have no time. And if you don't dedicate the time to breath work, which is one of the most basic things you can ever do for your health, then you're going nowhere. And it's the same with natural light. It's the same with grounding. It's the same with clearing your life of stressful or negative relationships or abusive relationships, and filling it with love and amazing people, because life becomes so much easier. So these things are all free. Cold showers are free. You can have your power cut and still have free cold water. It's actually illegal to turn water supply off in the UK. So even if you're bankrupt, you can have a cold shower, which is great for health. It's a free biohack, or you can go and get yourself an amazing cold plunge from Mazzocco Forge for several $1,000 and stick it in your garden. But you have both options. So it's not just for rich people. It's just, do you fly first class or do you fly economy? Do you buy a Bic or do you buy a Mont Blanc? They do the same thing ultimately.
Right. And you could start right now at any point with that. So many people say, I'm putting it off. It's almost, they use that excuse when I have enough, or when I save, or when I find time. When the truth is, start right now, one breath even, right? And Speaking of breathing, I know you're big on mouth taping, correct?
Yeah.
Can you go into that a little bit for those that don't know, because that's something that's really interesting.
It's actually the first semi-controversial post I ever did on Instagram. I was sitting in bed and I was chatting to my girlfriend at the time on the phone, and I was on the video call, and I had the True Dark military grade blue blockers on, and I was just like, this looks crazy. And I had the tape on the side of the bed next to me, and after I'd finished the call, I put it on. I was just like, this looks crazy. But the point is, it's so simple. So I did a post on it. I mean, I think the very basic of it, and I like to read as much as I can, distill it into very basic, easy, digestible explanations, because everyone's an expert. I don't like being an expert. I like being a curator. But basic is, we were born breathing through our nose. We're breastfed and we breathe through our nose. We should only use our mouth for eating or for kissing, not for breathing. Only in extreme circumstances should we use our mouth for breathing. The problem is, it doesn't filter with bacteria that we have in our nose. You don't produce nitric oxide in the same way that you would do through your nose, which has a whole host of benefits. You just have to Google nitric oxide and health benefits to see the massive, great list of health benefits for it. And yet, when we talk, obviously, we breathe through our mouth. You can hear when someone's throaty opposed to very nosy in their talk. And we become lazy. So not only are we not using our lung capacity properly, we're not using our noses, we're using our mouths, and therefore we're not dealing with our carbon dioxide properly. Therefore, we're under-oxygenated. Now, to talk about beauty clinic method, or should I say Patrick McGowan's book, The Oxygen Advantage, and this is something that really struck a chord with me, is if you overbreathe and you can't deal with we need carbon dioxide to get oxygen into the cell, basically. And if we don't hold our breath enough and deal with carbon dioxide properly, we will not get oxygen into the cell. Now, it seems counterintuitive to be able to deal with our carbon dioxide better to have more oxygen, but that's the way it works. So mouth taping, stopping us breathing through our mouth, and nose breathing, and having a slower respiratory rate, and holding our breath for longer so we get used to using our carbon dioxide better and utilizing our oxygen better, means that actually we flourish and we operate as we should do, opposed to being under-oxygenated. Now, to go back to my hyperbaric oxygen, why it worked so well for me is because I'm an overbreather, and not dealing with my carbon dioxide properly, therefore under-oxygenated. And that sounds like a real mishmash tug of war. It is. It absolutely is. So for me, I dropped hyperbaric as much as I was doing it, and I now treat myself with it more from the mind space and shutting myself off from the outside world. And when I really want a seriously strong nootropic, I stack it with aniracetam and go in the hyperbaric chamber, and I'm super productive for a couple of hours at 1.35 ATA. But I rely on nose breathing and box breathing, and by doing so, I can now trampoline with my mouth taped, whereas before I couldn't. I would trampoline and I would be like after 30 seconds. Now I can trampoline every day if I wish to, with my mouth taped through my nose without panting for air. And that also means that you're better hydrated, because we lose a lot of moisture through our breath, or we don't lose so much through our nose. So again, it's compounded. It's a compounded improvement in health, basically, for doing so, just on that one thing.
Absolutely. And to go to your point before, where you had that wonderful sleep after being in the hyperbaric chamber, it is about activating parasympathetic too. Like you said, having that higher CO2 level at time will actually activate the parasympathetic system too. So you're balancing your ANS, you're getting better sleep. There's this cascade of things that happen. And that's what people sometimes forget. They think, oh, breathing is just about oxygen. No, it's about so many different things that basically, make up who you are and your health. So that one little action of catching your breath, where I find so many people are just stressed throughout the day. We're living in a pandemic. We're always on our computers answering things. Every little notification is almost like a little thing to get the sympathetic nervous system going. Shallow breathing, right? And then you're having a hard time sleeping. Then that turns into hormonal adrenal fatigue, and it just cascades the wrong way. Where the right way, simple taping over and taking deeper breaths, holding it, getting your CO2 levels up, activating parasympathetic, that cascades in the right way. So it's so simple sometimes, right?
Yeah, and I think that's where biohacking is the forefront, because, for instance, with my Aura Ring, is everyone that the biohacker seems to have an Aura Ring these days. I obviously isolated various different things to see what would give me better sleep. And, for instance, I found that having hyperbaric oxygen therapy before bed improved my sleep significantly. It actually reduced my respiratory rate and improved my heart rate variability. And heart rate variability being an amazing indicator for overall health, obviously, as you know. Now, when I had magnesium IV before bed, and I had Kinton hydration isotonic before bed, and I had a glass of water, 300 milliliters before bed. And if I stacked it with trimethylglycine, then my body came out of sympathetic into parasympathetic mode, and my heart rate variability doubled, and my resting heart rate came down by 25%. Or I can be in a cabin on the beach, swimming in the sea 20 minutes a day, every day, which I did for 6 weeks during the summer. And I have an even better heart rate variability and resting heart rate because I'm away from the noise. But you can biohack your way nearly there, but you're never going to replace the natural element of it. But biohacking gives you that knowledge to be able to take the choice.
Absolutely. And of course, nature is the best way. But for so many of us, I say, what's the best way to live? Maybe, in a cave, away from EMFs, away from computers, getting outside all the time. We're just not going to live that way. You got to find that good medium ground there, where you're able to use these little hacks to bring nature into your life and live a healthier life. Now, one of the things I noticed, and a lot of biohackers really focus on biochemistry, but I noticed you talked about, and you put it in your actual IG profile, is Ho'oponopono. And that technique, which we've been talking about with patients for a long time, introducing, and it's a spiritual kind of mental technique, a Hawaiian one that has long traditions in getting back to zero. But can you go into how you came about bringing that into your life and what it's done for you? And maybe for those that don't know, just a little bit about how to practice Ho'oponopono.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's more about the mindset again, opposed to the specific. It's a Hawaiian practice, basically, about forgiveness.
Yeah.
And for me, in my journey, before getting sick, I was a selfish prick. I only cared about making money and running my businesses and being successful, quote unquote. Then when I started getting ill, I realized that people that had been sick weren't just weak, that they did have things going on. And also I've tried to grow up a bit. And previously I would, if someone pissed me off, I would eject them from my life. That's it, you know, put them at arm's length. Again, we go back to things that are painful, we try to distance ourselves from. So for me, part of the growing up piece is, you know, actually this was on a plant journey that I learned this, and it flashed across my eyes in under 5 seconds. But I'd ejected 5 or 6 people from my life that had caused me upset or I had an issue with or whatever it may be. And during this plant journey, I kind of, for some reason, it just went into my head that why do you eject people for disagreeing or not being the same 4% of the time? You're forgetting the 96% of the time that they are amazing, which is why they were your friends or colleagues in the first place. And so I kind of like, it just literally just, when I came out of it, I was just like, holy crap, yeah, I don't respect people for the amazing stuff. I only disrespect them for the stuff that I don't agree with. You know, we can't curate the world to be everyone we want them to be. And you're just going to have shallow, surface level relationships forever, and never anyone with any longevity. And you know, that translates also to, you know, Instagram posts. Sometimes when I do one, someone says, oh, I hate this post. I usually agree with everything you say, but I disagree with this, so I'm unfollowing. It's like, you know, and someone said the same to Dave Asprey the other week, actually, and I saw it, and I just replied and said, if you want someone that's going to say exactly what you want to say, there's going to be no one left. Point is, like, grow up. And for me, having that saying on my Instagram is a daily reminder to me and to my followers and friends or people that I'm not perfect. I'm trying to be better. I'm learning every day, and I practice forgiveness. And I actually went around and reached out to every single one of the people that I had ejected and made amends, and have much stronger relationships with them for that reason, with one exception, who is just a complete idiot who I do not wish to have back. But you know, you need to know the difference between, you know, when it's you and when it's others, and so that's why I have that on there.
Yeah, I mean, those 4 powerful words from it, right? I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you.
Yes.
And just, you know, keeping that in mind and repeating those words, you will start to strip yourself of ego and get back to that zero and kind of clear the energy to be able to take on what was, you know, probably a negative energy field around those relationships and those beliefs. So it's a wonderful system. And again, free, easy, 4 words, that's it, right? And just keep it in mind, and almost seems too easy. But I always say health really is in simplicity. We complicate it, and yes, it can seem very complicated. But when you strip it down, just like in universe and in nature, there is a simplicity and an order to it, a beautiful kind of, you know, order to it. So that's a really cool one. Now, outside, I know you said Health Optimization Summit is a little tricky during the pandemic. So how is that looking for this year? Is that taking up a lot of your time trying to organize it and get it going?
2020 was a nightmare for events.
Yes, it was.
Luckily, we have some very good exhibitors, brands, speakers, and colleagues and friends that have supported us. So we've continued to build the whole time. and we've, you know, we're basically over 70% subscribed for exhibitors already. So I'm very, very fortunate that we are in such a wonderful industry, in all honesty. It did cost me a bloody fortune to delay it last year, but we've moved out to September 18th, 19th, 2021. Now we've just heard release of the removal of the lockdown over the period of, you know, the next 5 weeks and so on and so forth, and when big events will be allowed to happen again. So I'm very happy about that. But have contingencies in place for this year should there be a lockdown again. You know, the venue, I've negotiated with the venue at a tough time in history, so I got a good deal. And if we need to postpone, it won't cost me anything this time. and all the exhibitors understand, but they can't put all their marketing efforts and all their exposure on hold forever. And they've got their budgets for the year. And a lot of them did very well last year because of the health industry. So, we're continuing to build. And if we need to change the date, we will, but we're building towards a goalpost. But I signed up for a venue that's 3 times the size of what we need, because if we have social distancing regulations, it will mean that we can operate at a third capacity, which puts us at 2,000 people, and our capacity target is 1,500. So, I've been thinking strategically and had done plenty of SWOT analysis to prepare for it. So I'm very hopeful for it, actually, very, very hopeful for it. And the word on the street from all of the exhibitors and speakers, the speakers are very happy. They're looking forward to it. As Dr. McCullough said to me, Tim, I haven't spoken at a live event in over a year now, and I'm used to doing many a year. I think it's going to be a welcome change. We will have things like vitamin D tests at the event, and so you can have a vitamin D test and a vitamin D shot straight away, which we have provided by one of our sponsors, which is amazing. And we have various other things in place as well to appease other people. But I would like to think by then we're in a very different world, judging by what the UK government said yesterday, which was, we understand people are still going to die, but it's a calculated risk. And, we now have a much firmer picture on what's happening. And with the vaccines instilling confidence, my opinions on vaccines, good or not, to one side, it helps a lot of people relax. So I'm very, very happy about this year, and I'm excited for it to happen. And the lineup is just like mind blowing for me. Jim Quick messaged me a few weeks ago and said, "Brother, I'd like to speak in London." It was just it's pretty awesome, because I love Jim and his work, and obviously along with Dave and Dr. McCullough and Vision from Mind Valley, they're all favorites of mine. So, my hero speaking at my conference in London is just awesome.
That's got to feel awesome. I mean, those are my top guys too that I love to follow, and just so much good comes out of them in their work. So I got my fingers crossed for you, man. And I really hope that comes together. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you brought it up. What are your thoughts on the vaccine?
Hey, thank you for asking. Are all cars good, or are all cars bad? Is my thing to say. I think vaccines have done wonderful things for us historically, and I think the world would be a very different place if we hadn't had them. I think they can be good and they can be bad, and I'm not going to tar them with the same brush. I will say that I will not be a crash test dummy myself, and I'm very happy for people if they want to go and do it. Whether or not I'm happy with my mother going and doing it or not is another thing. But if people have their own choice to go and do it, that's fine. They are the collective people that will help see whether or not it's going to work on a wide scale. There is an area of vaccines being needed, and then areas of vaccines for money. And where this one sits on that regard, I have no idea. And, I would like to think that the world is trying to capitalize on a true need, opposed to creating something to make money. I'm in the more give positive intention, think of positive intention, and they're just capitalizing on it. So my answer is I'm not for or against. And if it turns out to be a good one, then I will have it. If it turns out to be a bad one, I will not. And I would suggest my mum exactly the same.
Hey, that's an honest answer, and I feel you on that, because I don't think there is a right or wrong. This is not a black or white issue. It's a gray one. Everyone's different, whether you need it or not, whether you're in a position, and that's a question for you and maybe your medical professional or who you trust to make those decisions. But I have spoken to experts like Dr. Lawrence Palevsky, who's a big talker on, vaccines, and there are things people should know before they make a decision. It's about, I will say, informed consent, right? Yeah. If you know what you're getting into, absolutely, that is your choice. No one's knocking you. No one's telling you should or shouldn't. But if you go into it not really knowing what exactly is in it, what is it even? What is mRNA even doing? Is this the first of its kind? If you don't know those answers, perhaps you're not informed. But again, it's your choice whether you want to be informed or not to make a decision. Lots of people do uninformed decisions.
Well, it's funny because Dr. Amy Killen, who's a colleague, a speaker, friend, she's amazing. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Amy, but she works with Dr. Harry Adelson and stem cells and also sexual optimization. But I hold her to a very, very high regard. I have a lot of respect for Amy. And she shared that she had had the vaccine 3 weeks ago. And I just said to her, I messaged her and just said, Amy, can I just ask your logic for why you've had it? You know, there's no negative attachment to this. There's nothing at all. I'm just really curious because of how I hold you in high regard as to why you did. And she said, I've done many therapies throughout my years and, you know, it's my area. And also I'm seeing patients. So it's not just for my own protection. It's, you know, for my patient's assurance. And, you know, RNA isn't something that's new to me. So I'm very comfortable doing it. And I was like, thank you very much. You know, and that kind of really changed my perspective on, you know, it's not everything people are making it out to be. They're connecting the correlation versus causation, you know, vaccine passports and all the scary stuff that goes with it. I think if someone like Amy, for instance, who's very, you know, intelligent and smart and street as well, chooses to do that, then I listen.
Yeah.
So yeah, we will see. Time will tell. There is no right or wrong. It's not black and white. It's grey, as you say. I actually did a post on it's not black or white last week because so many people say, "Oh, you're keto," or "You're carnivore," or "You're this," or that. You're wrong. So actually, no, it's not that simple. So yeah.
No, listen, health in general isn't black or white. There is not right or wrongs. Like you said, when people say, "What's your diet?" It's like, well, you know, it's not one or the other. It's a personalized mishmash. I put quality in how I eat first, even over what I eat. So these are the types of things that you of course, have to personalize it to yourself and realize we live in these shades between black and white. And I think what you said there before, when you asked that question, not to have attachment, that's a smart way to go about this discussion because it's been incredibly polarized. That's why I was a little afraid to ask you a little, but you know, you answered in a way that isn't going towards the polarization of yes or no, because I agree. I don't think many people could really sit in either corner and talk to each other and have a discussion that leads people to become more educated and more empowered.
All I care about is health.
Yeah.
I don't care. I have no bias. I don't have to stick to a certain song sheet. I just care about the goal, which is health. And that's why health optimization works so well as a brand, I think, because it tells you what the goal is, opposed to a label that you don't necessarily understand. Well, you know, I am a biohacker. I am, but I am in it for health optimization. Yeah, no, when I did that talk that I mentioned earlier on about when I said about going to LA, you know, someone came up to me in the halfway break and said, "So Tim, what's your opinion on vaccines?" And, you know, they were trying to provoke a response. And I said, at this moment in time, I have no opinion. And they said, you're weak if you can't describe your blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, I just have no opinion that I wish to share with you right now because I'm still collecting my thoughts. And, you know, and they tried to knock me for it, as usual, trying to provoke a response. But the point is I'm being completely genuine, you know, absolutely and utterly. You can't, it's like, you don't break up with someone and say all women are bad as a result. You know,
right.
There's some incredible people out there. So, you know, the vaccine is no different.
Yeah, and that level of authenticity going into it and understanding your North Star is health, but you're never going to know everything about it. You're constantly a student, you're constantly healing, and that journey goes on forever. So, you know, you constantly learn new things, and then of course you could put your opinion out on it and experience out on it. It's for others then to decide as well. But I really do love what you're doing. Where can people learn more about you?
So my main channel is Instagram, where I update daily. It's Tim Biohacker. Nice timing for a notification. So Instagram, Tim Biohacker, and the summit is Health Optimization Summit.
Yeah, well, I'm really looking forward, and I hope this one comes through. I'd love to be over there in London and meet you there. So all the best to you. Thank you so much for sharing and doing what you're doing, and keep up the good fight.
Thanks for having me.